We still do 7 NUFC Matters shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, the only thing that makes us all believe.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith and George Mitchell. It is a Those Were the Days special. We're going to have a few of these because we're going to be looking back at FA Cups. To start with, anyway, we're going to be looking at the 1950-51 FA Cup run and final. George, thanks for agreeing to do this. Your suggestion, of course, and nice little continuation to what we've already done with Those Were the Days. So, as always, I'll hand it over to you.
So many questions from people about how different was it when we won the Carabao Cup recently to when we won the cups in the 50s, and there were some differences, but there were also some interesting contrasts, which is what I like to highlight. And there's the 11 that essentially won the cup with the manager that didn't actually manage with. That's Doug Livingston, who got sacked a lot later on. Anyway, that's the 11 that played for us and was so instrumental in those 5 years, not just 3 years. And the strips were interesting. The home and away, the home was obviously the black and white stripes, but the second strip was always white shirt, black shorts, and the normal socks in those days. And it didn't vary. Obviously, clubs didn't have a third or a fourth strip in those days. It was just two strips, which is why I put that particular picture in. And there's the original cup final strip with the badge, which is essentially the coat of arms of the city, which is what we always traditionally used to wear. And Newcastle used to insist that you couldn't wear that badge on behalf of the club unless you actually did something special, played in a cup final, played in a youth cup final, something like that. So it wasn't something you could put on your blazer just for the sake of doing it. And, it was like that all the time I can remember until 74. And there's the cup final ticket, which actually was my father's. He went to all those finals in the 50s. And the first one was the Blackpool one. And that's the actual ticket from the match, and was just about half a week's wages. The bloke that got the ticket for him asked me dad how many he wanted, and my father could hardly afford one. He had to get a lot of assistance from the family to let him go to the final, and he hitchhiked all the way there. set off on Friday lunchtime and just got there in time for the match. And then had to hitchhike all the way back home again in the hope of getting back to work for Monday, because he had the threat of his gaffer at the slipway where he worked that if he didn't appear on the Monday morning, he would be sacked. So he had an incentive to get back. So that it all adds to the personal interest in the FA Cup. The other things was that because we're Newcastle United, all sorts of strange things happened pre and after the cup final. The next one is the group of players, Steve. Yeah, that one. That's the Stan Seymour invented training camps, and that's our cup final squad at their training camp at the Buxton Spa Hotel, which is one of the top hotels of the whole country. And Seymour used to take them there for a couple of weeks before the final, and they used to get £2 a day expenses. £2 a day expenses, for God's sake, for being away from their families, which is interesting. That's a fairly not happy group, because that's on the Wednesday of the week when the families were allowed to come to the spa and enjoy time with them. Well, one of the things that happened was that Len Shackleton, who was Jackie Milburn's best friend but played for our near neighbours, came with Jackie's wife and his own wife and brought the message that at the cup final, Stanley Matthews had negotiated that Blackpool would get £30 appearance money, where Newcastle were only getting 10. And they had a meeting to approach Seymour and say, hey, do something about this money or else. And what made it worse is that Charlie Crowe had links, one of our players, had links to somebody who played in the Coldstream Guards band, and they were getting 25 quid for playing at half time in the band, and Newcastle players were getting 10 quid. It got bumped up to 15, so there was no strike, but it shows the difference in how things have changed and the sort of things that used to happen around Newcastle United. It could only be us. Next, Steve. And that's Seymour, not long before he passed on. A character, there's no doubt about it. I mean, he put his life and soul into Newcastle United, won everything as a player, then invested his money in the club and became a director, chairman, manager 3 times, black and white through and through, desperate, did all sorts of incredible things. But unfortunately, because he was such a difficult character, he didn't have the charm to carry it off. So I've never seen anybody creating for a statue of Stan Seymour outside St James's, and I don't think I ever will. But he did an awful lot. That's simply to show you our ground in days gone by. Now this is in, I think it's about February, March. If you look at the triangle on the pitch that doesn't have any grass, from about February until the end of March, that triangle used to be ankle deep mud. It was horrible, absolutely awful to play on. And that aerial picture shows the state that the pitch was in those days. So, you know, when you look at what they play on now, and how they maintain it, it's just another world, a completely different world altogether. And that's Stan in his shirt when he was in one of the league winning teams. Oh, the mascots have been around a long time, and that was the mascot of this particular era, whose name is Jack Richardson, and he couldn't get a ticket for the match, so there was a brouhaha that he couldn't get a ticket. So eventually the club found him a ticket, and he got to the match. Why couldn't he get a ticket? Well, people complained because there was only 33,000 tickets available for the Carabao Cup. Well, for that cup final and the other subsequent cup finals in the 50, Wembley held 100,000, and the club only got 12,000, and the club themselves kept 1,800 to give to their friends and neighbours and players and that sort of thing. So the mascot had to beg, borrow and steal a cup ticket to get to the match. So it shows the contrast of how we appreciate or don't appreciate things that happen now. And there's an unusual picture. The two Robledos, getting a picture of the two of them together was never easy. And there they are in their home in Gosforth with the mother, who effectively was their agent. Newcastle went to buy George from Barnsley, and Mrs. Robledo said, "Well, you can't have George unless you take Ted." So they ended up buying them both, and it turned out well because Ted Robledo was an excellent halfback, as we used to call him in those days, defensive midfielder we call them now, and there they are together in their shirts on St James's Park. And getting the pictures like that of the two of them together was quite difficult. And that's the house in Gosforth with the blue plaque on it now, and with their niece with the Chilean flag when they put the blue plaque on the house as part of a memorial to them and what they did for Newcastle United. Now that goes with the cup final ticket. This is the Queens Lando, and the man who got my father that ticket was the postilion. That's the guys on the red coats sitting on top behind the horses. The one on the right hand side was the one that got my father his cup final ticket. His father was a manager in the same factory that my dad worked in, and knew my dad would want one. So got the message that he could get me dad a ticket from Buckingham Palace if he wanted one. And the message came back was, "Oh, you can get one, Harry. How many do you want?" Well, when he saw the price, he nearly passed away, because it was one ticket nearly took a week's wages. To get more than that but that just shows there were more tickets available in Buckingham Palace apparently than there were at St James's Park. So he got that postilion's job. He's former member of special services, and underneath that red coat he has a very very prominent bulge, because there's an automatic weapon underneath there to protect the royal family. That's the Blackpool shirt, nicknamed the Tangerines for obvious reasons, and they went into this match as favourites, hot favourites. Plus they had the backing of the entire southern press and a lot of the northern press too, because a certain man called Stanley Matthews, who was then reaching 36, I think it was, hadn't got a cup final winners medal. And the whole country apparently wanted Matthews to win a cup final winners medal. And the view of the southern press was that don't know why Newcastle's turning up, because Blackpool's going to win this one. Stanley Matthews on his own. But it didn't work out like that, as we discover. And there's the first programme, which is the third round match at home against Bury, who were a struggling second division team in those days. And we were expected to beat them, and beat them we did. But there was more excitement in the game than people imagine. And the Newcastle team was Jack Fairbrother in goal, Bobby Cowell, Alf McMichael, Joe Harvey, Mac McNeil at centre half, Charlie Crowe, Tommy Walker on the right wing, Ernie Taylor inside, Jackie Milburn centre forward, George Robledo and Bobby Mitchell. And I was just a young kid and couldn't believe what I was watching. Nobody else in the Gallagher end could either, because on 11 minutes, Jackie Milburn outran the Bury defence and buried the ball to score the first one. 13 minutes, Tommy Walker on the right side repeated the dose. 16 minutes, George Robledo headed in from a corner. And then on 19 minutes, Ernie Taylor from somewhere just beyond the penalty spot had dribbled his way through and slotted the ball underneath the Bury goalkeeper. And then on 35 minutes, Bill Griffiths, the Bury fullback, They got a penalty and he took that. And it went in at half-time at 4-1. Now, you can imagine the Gallagher corner were looking for a repeat dose in the second half. Well, the repeat dose didn't come because Bury dug their heels in and made it that much more difficult for 33,900 at the match. The Bury team was made up of, as you can imagine, of players either on their way up or on their way down, as it were, finishing their careers. And the guy who scored the penalty, Bill Griffiths, was a Welsh international. Eric Massey's fullback. Jimmy Greenhoff was a halfback for them, and his son was later to play for Manchester. His grandson, rather, was later to play for Manchester United, of the same name, Jimmy Greenhoff. Les Hart, who was ex-Manchester City player, Harry Whitworth, George Hallett, Tommy Daniel, who was a dangerous centre forward, but for Wales, and Harold Brodie, a Scotsman, and Alf Bellis, who was a dangerous left winger, made up the rest of their team. But as I say, the perceived wisdom was to go in at half 4-1. We were going to get a cricket score. Well, it didn't happen like that. So, as usual, it's in football. It's not what it doesn't always go the way you expect it to. Next one, Steve. Now, I couldn't find the single program for one of the cup runs, so that's the whole set of programs for the cup run. And the next game was against Bolton at St James's Park, and that's the individual Bolton program, and 67,596 in the ground. Now that's a real pushy, shovey Gallagher corner, I can tell you, and it was that way because Bolton were one of the top teams at the time with some fascinating players. Newcastle came out with Faber, Cowell, Corbett, Harvey, Matt McNeil, Charlie Crowe, Tommy Walker, Ernie Taylor, Jackie Milburn, George Robley doing Bobby Mitchell, and Bolton came out with Stan Hansen. Bolton goalkeeper Stan Hansen was one of the ones who used to always sport a polo neck in those days for his jersey, but he also was huge. Nowadays we'd say he'd eaten all the Greg's pies. He was a huge man, 6 foot something tall and 6 foot something wide. It really was a monster of a guy. Ralph Banks at fullback, Donald Howe at the other side, Malcolm Barras and Billy Hughes on the right, Willie Moyer, Scottish international, and then the player everybody wanted to see and would have been desperate to sign for Newcastle if they could, except that Jackie Milburn was our centre forward, and that was Nat Lofthouse, who was their young centre forward and tearing the first division up, and Harry Webster and left winger Bobby Langton, who played for England, who they just bought from Blackburn Rovers, and didn't get the plaudits of the Gallagher corner because he was offered a chance to come to Newcastle and turned us down and went to Bolton instead. But 67,596, and it was a great game. The excitement was tremendous. We got off to a great start with Bobby Mitchell dribbling his way through the Bolton defence on 3 minutes to make it 1-0. And then 28 minutes, Willie Moyer, the Scottish international, made it 1-1. And then he repeated the dose on 43 minutes to put Bolton in the lead 2-1. And then just after half-time, on 46 minutes, a thunderbolt from Jackie Milburn made it 2-2. And then after that, my memory is that it was end-to-end stuff, and either team could easily have gone through. But in the end, it was another Jackie Milburn special that settled it on 55 minutes. He was on the edge of the penalty area, unmarked, and it ended up in the top corner without a blink of an eye. A real sort of shot that nearly took the goal out of its stanchions. So we go through to the next round, and the next round is an away game at Stoke. That's hold that for a while, Steve. That picture, because that's the next one. Anyway, Stoke was the next game, and we were away. Stoke were playing well, but it was thought we should take them and get into the next round. We sent the same team we've been playing all season, except that Brennan went in instead of McNeil at centre half. Brennan had been injured. So it was Fairbrother, Cowell, Corbett, Harvey, Brennan, Crowe, Tommy Walker, Ernie Taylor, Jackie Milburn, George Robledo, and Bobby Mitchell. Note the forward line hasn't altered at all. And at the Victoria ground, 48,500 were there. And it was, I wasn't there myself, but what I've read and can remember the family talking about, it was an absolutely super game. And Stoke, of course, were a good side and had some very strong players in the team. Billy Mould was a international fullback. Johnny Sellers was a Scottish. Jack Curtin was an English international. Ormston was a Scottish international. Frank Bowyer was an English international. Les Johnson, Scottish international. Alan Mullard, Irish international. And Harry Oscroft was a Welsh international. So a very talented side, and gave a good account of themselves. However, we Newcastle were on top from the off, and it wasn't long before, on 22 minutes, George Robledo with a beautiful header from just outside the goal area, on 22 minutes made it 1-0. And then on 40 minutes, he repeated the dose from the other side of the pitch and volleyed in from a corner from the other side at 40 minutes to make it 2-0. And then second half, Stoke come back at us immediately after half time. And it was no surprise on 57 minutes when Frank Bowyer made it 2-1 and looked like they were going to come back into it. Then whenever you needed help in those days, it was either Milburn or Mitchell that used to provide it. Well, on this occasion, it was both of them. On 68 minutes, Jackie Milburn scored a peach of a goal. And then on 82 minutes, Bobby Mitchell dribbled his way through the Stoke defence and made it 4-2. So we go through to the next round on a good win in a game against a team we were forecast by all the pundits we would struggle against. The next one is Bristol Rovers. That photograph, if you've still got it, Steve, that's us at Bristol Rovers in the replay, because Bristol Rovers came to St James's, third division team, but a promising team with some dangerous players, and we played our usual lineup with at St James's with Fairbrother, Cowell, Corbett, Harvey, Brennan, Crowe, Tommy Walker, Ernie Taylor, Jackie Milburn, George Robledo, and Bobby Mitchell. And Bristol, Bert Hoyle, Harry Bamford, Jeff Fox, Jackie Pitt, Ray Warren, who was an international, but an old international, Peter Sampson, an old international, George Petheridge, an old Welsh international, Jeff Bradford, who though they were in the third division, was being pushed by the press for inclusion in the England squad because he was playing so well. Joshua Whiting was the left winger who was very dangerous. So a good side, but one which shouldn't really trouble us. But at St James's Park, they dug their heels in and really gave us a tough time. 63,000 crowd at this game for Bristol Rovers, and it was to say disappointing in the Gallagher corners, putting it mildly. Lots of chances, but just couldn't rattle the onion bag, put it in an onion bag, and struggled to get a result. So we ended up with a 0-0 draw, and had to go to Eastville, Bristol's ground, for a replay on the Wednesday, as you didn't get you had to play on the Wednesday to have the replay. There was no choice about that. It was all written down. You know, the rules were there, and so we went to Bristol for the replay. I think there might be a program there, Steve. It's possible, and that's another picture from the Eastville. 32,000 at that game, and that's the biggest crowd they ever had at Eastville, right up until they moved away from Eastville. That was their record crowd. And when that's it. Yeah.
George.
Sorry. Right. Okay. So I pushed that in the wrong place. Sorry. Anyway, it was a good game, and just to get the nerves on edge, of course, Jeff Branford, the dangerous centre forward who was being touted for England, put Bristol 1-0 in the lead in 15 minutes. And of course, the Gallagher faithful started to tremble a little bit. But 16 minutes, 1 minute later, Ernie Taylor managed to make it 1-1. And 23 minutes from a corner, Charlie Crowe nips in and heads in number 2. And then on 28 minutes, Jackie Milburn with his Milburn special makes it 3-1. And that's how it stayed until till half time, and how it stayed till the end, because the second half was a lot of end-to-end stuff, but nobody looking like they were going to score. And our unchanged team won the replay to take us through to the next round, which was against Wolverhampton Wanderers. It's right, okay.
That's got FACup semi-final on, so I think you picked the wrong
That's
one.
Right. That's right. Wolves was the semi-final, so we got to the semi and played Fairbrother, the same team: Fairbrother, Cowell, Corbett, Harvey, Brennan, Crowe, Walker, Taylor, Milburn, Rob Lido and Mitchell. And Wolves at that time were regarded as one of the teams of the division, the first division, challenging for the title. Bert Williams, Jack Short, Roy Pritchard, Eddie Russell, Bill Shorthouse, Billy Wright, the England captain, of course, Johnny Hancock's England right winger, Johnny Walker, and Jimmy Dunn and Jimmy Mullen. 6 England players in that Wolves side, so there were no slouches. 62,250 at Hillsborough, and it was an entertaining game, but neither team could hit the back of the net, so we ended up with a 0-0 draw and having to return to Hillsborough for another replay. Except that they couldn't get Hillsborough for the Wednesday, So it had to go to somewhere else, and it went to Huddersfield, the Leeds Road. Leeds Road, what a ground. One of the traditional old-fashioned grounds, which was built. I mean, remember our old stand was all wood. Well, Leeds Road, Huddersfield's old ground, the whole bloody stadium was sleepers. It was an amazing place to go. To say it was rickety was putting it mildly. But that's where the semi-final the replay had to go. And 47,300 went to Leeds Road for this semi-final. And both teams virtually unchanged. Well, we were certainly unchanged. And so quite an entertaining game. Again, Wolves took the lead. Johnny Walker, their dangerous winger, scored on 16 minutes to put the wind up Newcastle. But on 33 minutes, Old Faithful Jackie Milburn, with a thunder shot from 30 yards, made it 1-1. And then a minute later, just as Wolves were trying to reorganise themselves, Bobby Mitchell, Twinkle Toes as he was called, went right through their defence to make it 2-1. And really knocked the stuffing out of them. And that's how it stayed till half time. And in fact, how it stayed right till the end, because although there was lots of end-to-end stuff, it was quite clear that there was nobody going to score any more goals than in the match. But it was a particularly good game. Lots of good football. The interesting thing is Bert Williams was the England goalkeeper, and at that time, and he made some incredible saves to keep Wolves in the game. And Wolves in the semi-final introduced a teenager at centre forward called Roy Swinburne, who within 18 months was centre forward for England. A real talent. Brought into the cup side by their then manager, who was, of course, the great Stan Cullis, who used to be the player, the talisman. And I mean, stories are that Billy Wright was bereft in the dressing room afterwards because he was wanting to go to play in the cup final. Well, we denied Billy Wright that pleasure. By knocking them out in the semi-final. But an interesting fact that we had to go to a semi-final to replay to get to the final to Wembley. So we're now facing a final against Blackpool, the team who now that's interesting talking point is that that's the Wembley programme that was produced by Blackpool. Because the copyright laws weren't quite so strict in those days, Blackpool decided to produce a programme of their own, as well as the official souvenir programme, which I think you'll see shortly. And that's the souvenir programme, which everybody's used to, and it's just interesting these weird quirky things that come on. Now this is a game we weren't supposed to win. I think I said it at the beginning. This was Stanley Matthews' swan song, not swan song, but it was his big hurrah at 36 years of age. The only thing he didn't have in football, in domestic football, was an FA Cup winners' medal. And he was playing so superbly and so out of his skin at this time. He was winning everything. Blackpool's form, and that's the two teams going onto the pitch. Blackpool's form at that time was tip-top, where ours wasn't. And indeed, Blackpool reported Newcastle to the FA for fielding weakened teams in our league matches. And this was, of course, a great discussion in our household because we finished fourth in the league. And if we'd won only 3 more games, we probably could have won the double. But my uncles and I have to say my father as well were of the view that players managed to claim injury and all sorts of things, so that we fielded weakened teams against some of the other people in the league to protect their places in the cup side. And so when we got to the semi-final, Blackpool were well below us in the league. By the time we got to the final, because there were a very long period of time between the semi-final and the final, Blackpool were above us and were actually third in the league, and we were fourth. So, and it's all down to Stanley Matthews. So the press in the south and elsewhere were trumpeting the fact that this was going to be the Matthews final. The sides were littered with internationals, of course. Newcastle is unchanged in the cup side that it had. Fairbrother, Cowell, Corbett, Harvey, Brennan, Crowe, Tommy Walker, Ernie Taylor, Jackie Milburn, George Robledo, and Bobby Mitchell, with 100,000 in Wembley Stadium. And that's the king shaking hands with the Blackpool players. The Blackpool side, George Farm, who was the Scottish goalkeeper, Eddie Shinwell, and Tommy Garrett, which were the England fullbacks. Harry Johnson was England midfielder. Hugh Kelly, who played for Scotland. Stanley Matthews was on the right wing for England. Jackie Moody, Scotland. Stan Mortensen, who sometimes played centre forward for England. And Bill Slater, who was a midfielder for England. And Bill Perry, who was a left winger for England. So it was a star-studded team, a great team. But the man everybody thought was going to win this match and make the difference was Stanley Matthews. It was all about Stanley Matthews. So that's Joe Harvey and Harry Johnson at the toss-up at the beginning of them, with the referee none other than Billy Ling, who was one of the better-known referees in the league, taking the final. And first half was a lot of end-to-end stuff, but Matthews hardly got a kick because our fullback and midfielder, halfback Charlie Crowe, Bobby Corbett and Charlie Crowe on the left side, had spent nearly a week working on how to stop Stanley Matthews, with Jackie Milburn trying to mimic how Matthews played. And the net result was that they worked out a system that if Matthews passed one, he would be caught by the other, and it worked a treat. So the match he was supposed to be going to win on his own, Stanley Matthews hardly got a kick. And if you'd read the press at the time, you'd think Newcastle had committed treason, because they denied Stanley Matthews getting a medal. The first half was even Steven, but the second half became Jackie Milburn's final. On 50 minutes, he scored a blinder, and there it is, from about 30 yards. Taylor got the ball on the edge of the penalty area and back-heeled the ball into Milburn's path. And there it is, with Farm, the goalkeeper, looking over his shoulder as it flies into the top of the net to give the 1-0. And then 5 minutes later, Jackie almost repeats the dose, but from slightly closer in. And that's the second one from slightly closer in, just in the penalty area, slipping it past the goalkeeper. Got there by sheer pace, just outran the Blackpool defence. That's the crowd. Can you notice the one or two rattles in the crowd? You know, the black and white rattle that I've got? Well, there's one or two of them you can see being shaken in the crowd at that particular final. I'm surprised there's only a couple, because plenty of people had them. Anyway, the next bit of controversy was that shortly after that second goal, Jackie Milburn scored a third in what would have been the first hat trick at Wembley, but it was disallowed for offside. And I think if you ever get a chance to look at the video, had VAR been on, Jackie would have got the hat trick. But so we won 2-0, and that last picture was Bobby Cowell heading the ball off the goal line in one of Blackpool's attacks, and saving, keeping us a nice clean sheet. That Jackie Moody, the Blackpool Scottish centre forward, attacking forward, looking on with Jack Fairbrother nowhere to be seen, of course, on the thing. The other interesting thing is this was mooted to be the first televised FA Cup, but that was disallowed. So what they did allow was the second half to be broadcast on radio, and the famous Raymond Glendenning did the radio commentary, which he did for the next 20 or 30 years. But it was the next one which eventually became the one to be televised. And so as things moved on, there's Joe Harvey getting the cup off Winston Churchill. Next to Churchill is Sir Stanley Rouse, who was the chairman of the FA, an ex-referee, managed to get himself into that position. And Stanley Rouse was Mr. Football in those days. Everywhere you went to do with football, it was Stanley Rouse who was the guy. And there's Brennan and Milburn holding Joe Harvey up. They don't tend to do that sort of thing nowadays. It's all running around with garlands and that sort of thing. Carrying your captain on his shoulders is the thing of the past, but something that is a good memory actually for anybody out to do with it. And there they are enjoying it together. And I think that there may be others which are in front of our own fans. Again, and there's one of the medals. I don't know whose medal it is. I cannot read the name. But there's one of the medals for the winners.
That looks it looks like a runners-up medal actually. JK somebody Blackpool.
Ah, yes, it is. Sorry, I put one of each on, and fortunately, now that's Frank Brennan sticking his head out of the window on the train when they came home. Nice picture of Frank Brennan. A great servant at the club, fantastic centre half, and a thoroughly nice man. And there's the parade. Now, isn't that familiar? You know, the Carabao Cup all over again. And bear in mind, you know, we're talking about 1950, 51, and still that's them getting in the coach at Central Station and going all the way up to St James's Park to parade the cup. And believe you me, it was full all the way. That parade was every bit as chock-a-block as some that we've seen in recent years. So it's always been a great thing. That's Steve. That's for the next one. That one's out of sequence, I'm afraid. Yeah. The parades were every bit as exciting. In fact, and there's one of the souvenir booklets. Now, somewhere in my loft, I've got that. I got a picture of that off the internet, but I've actually got that booklet in the loft somewhere amongst my memorabilia, and treasure it and all the memories it brings.
Great stuff, George. What a recollection that was. And looking forward to covering the following one, which of course was only a year later, which is 51-52. So we'll do that on the next show.
Yes, and as I say, people ask, you know, what was the difference? I repeat what I said then. The FA Cup, that FA Cup win wasn't the beginning of something. It was the end of something. There was no European Cup. There was nothing to go on to, nothing to look forward to. You just started again the next season. And Seymour set his cap for the FA Cup because that's where all the money was. It was the FA Cup that won the clubs the money, and not other things. The money for winning the cup was better than the money for winning the league. I know that sounds daft, but that's just the way it was. Hasn't the FA always been daft? And Stanley Rouse used to rule the roost, of course. So we made our first landmark, and not without some Newcastle United twists and turns, like the threatened strike at the beginning, and then all sorts of things that happened in between. So yeah, great days, but worth remembering.
Great stuff, George. Thanks a lot. See you on the next one.
My pleasure. Good to see everybody.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them at www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickys.co.uk, email info@mrvickys.co.uk, or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. 2-crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. Hot and cold snacks and drinks available on the coach, all excursions included. Their website, unitedgrouptravel.com, email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com, telephone 01670 632 460 or 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And if you like listening to us as a podcast, you can go to Sports Social Podcast Network or to iTunes, Spotify, or other podcast providers. If you want to support the show, then hit the subscribe button. It's free. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the little thumb up under the video, which is the like button, or click share to share to your social media. You can also join the channel on YouTube by hitting the join button for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to become an NUFC Matters member, you can go to nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. It's a £25 one-off fee. You get your pen, you get your badge, a key ring, you get your beer mat and your fridge magnet and your membership card, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk for that. And we have an event early next year, 13th of February 2026, an evening with Beardsley, Waddle and Gascoigne takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. To buy your tickets for that event, go to the box office 0191 243 1171 or Tyne Theatre and Opera House.uk.